Test, test, 1, 2, 3, 4. Got it.
Oh, it's okay. No, I'm really on. I'm too loud. Do I need to turn myself down? Okay. Test, test, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, test, test, test.
Test, test.
No. I'm probably not. Come on.
No, you're not on. I can hear you through the headphones. You can? Yeah. I can hear myself in the headphones. Test, test, test.
1, 2,
Test,
1,
test.
2, 1, 2.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad to have any of you with us who are watching online. We have a few wonderful folks here with us, and we're excited to have professionals from the Lafayette Hearing Center here to fill us in on the hearing loop and to answer any questions that anyone has about that. We have Dr. Susan Talia, who is an audiologist, and we have Joelle Beisel, who is a nationally board certified hearing instrument specialist. So we're excited to hear what they have to tell us.
All right. So I have been an audiologist for about 25 or 30 years now, and I really love what I do. I love working with people who don't hear well and helping them hear better. And Joe and I have been working together about 5 years, and the Lafayette Hearing Center was started by Dr. Mary Cacavo, who is one of Monticello's own, so people have heard of Dr. Mary. She started the Lafayette Hearing Center and ran it for a very long time. She's now retired, so we have a crew of 4 providers, myself, Joelle, Andrea Gray, and Molly Merton. So that's our group. So let's look at the next slide here. So today we're going to talk about hearing loops, and I want to tell you all what a hearing loop is and why they're important, okay? And why do you need one in a church anyway? You've got a great sound system. You've got a wonderful crew that runs your sound information. So what's a loop and why do we care? So a hearing loop is literally a loop of wire, and it is installed in a facility. In this case, it's in your church under the carpet. And when you have a hearing loop installed, you can hear very easily and simply by just putting on a special receiver or using a loop headset. So it's installed out of sight. Sometimes it's in the floor and sometimes it's in the ceiling. Jeff, you can just go through all of them. There's like 5 little points that'll come up. Okay, thank you. The loop is connected into the audiovisual system of the church. So it should be kind of invisible. You shouldn't be able to see it. And the only way you know if a church or a building has a loop is if they have some signs up, or if you happen to know that there's a loop there. The loop is always on, so whenever the sound system is turned on, the loop is automatically on. So people like Jeff running our soundboard today don't have to doodle with it. It's just on or off, which is nice and simple. Loops are calibrated so that if you listen to a loop and you have a good signal here at the church and you go over to Purdue's Elliott Hall of Music, which also has a loop, you're going to hear the same at Purdue's Hall of Music as you are here at the church. The calibration is an international standard, and there are loops over in Europe as well. So if you go to Westminster Cathedral in London, you can also hear very clearly there too. So this is a drawing of how a loop is kind of organized. It is literally around the outside of the sanctuary under the carpet. and it taps into the audio-visual system. So anything that plays through the system comes out through the loop. The loop itself makes an electromagnetic field, and the receivers that you either have in your hand or that you have in your hearing aid pick up that electromagnetic field, and that's how it works. And then the hearing aid or the headphones translate that signal into an acoustic sound for you to hear. All right, Jeff, next slide. So what makes it work? So the loop is there. You can't hear the loop unless you have a thingy called a T-coil or a telecoil. Telecoils were invented to help people hear over the phone. Ma Bell used to make all of our telephones, and when people had hearing aids and they put the phone receiver up to their ear, the hearing aid would squeal, and that was called feedback. So in order to get around that, people had a switch called a T-switch. You'd flip the switch, it would turn the microphone of the hearing aid off and activate the T-coil, and you could hear over the phone. And the T-coil used the electromagnetic field from the receiver handset, and that was how you could hear. Well, these days we don't have the phones made by Ma Bell anymore. We all have digital wireless phones or cell phones. And so T-coils kind of went out of style. By taking them out of the hearing aids, it helped manufacturers make smaller hearing aids. And so they have fallen by the wayside until people figured out that hearing loops are the only way to get a lot of people to hear really well in a large space. So T-coils are coming back around now, and looping is how you use the T-coil in a place that's a large auditorium or a church or something like that. All right, next slide there, Jeff, please. Let's see, did I cover everything there? Let me go back one. Let me make sure I got everything there. Oh yeah, you can't tell by looking at the, by a hearing aid, you can't tell by looking at it if it has the ability to pick up the loop. And that's very frustrating for people that use hearing aids. But if you ask your provider if they have one, they can tell you. And I will be talking more about that later in this talk too. How do you know if you've got the loop or not? Okay, now let's look at the next one. Okay, so hit it again, Jeff. So we already had a good sound system. Why do we need a loop too? All right, next one. So churches are notorious for being very reverberant. Reverberation is when sound bounces around. And so the picture on the white with the little lines is showing sound bouncing around in the church. Reverberation is a fancy word for echo. And so as people talk or the music plays, the sound bounces all around and it makes it harder to hear. We have a video of, and I don't know how it'll come through. Jeff, if you click on the stained glass windows, it might play through your system. Oh, maybe not. And that's okay. If you, It's not playing. Okay, that's okay. That video is courtesy of Dr. Juliet Sturkins, who is an advocate for hearing loops. You can access that video online through hearingloop.org, and that is also at the end of the presentation today, that reference. But she has a nice recording that you can play through your computer speakers that has the reverberation, and then no reverberation, and reverberation. Okay, now go to the next slide. Okay, so reverberation doesn't bother people when they have a normal range of hearing. But as soon as you develop even a mild hearing loss, it becomes harder for you to hear in a lot of reverberation. So think about trying to have a conversation in a hotel lobby or an indoor pool or a gymnasium. There's a lot of reverberation just from me talking in here because of where the speakers are. Now, if your hearing range is perfect, no problem. But if you even have a mild hearing loss, that extra bouncing around of the sound makes it so much harder to follow things and understand what people are saying. And church is the last place you want to miss out on what people are saying. All right, go to the next one here. About 10% of people in their late 50s will have significant hearing problems. About a quarter of us start having hearing loss when we get a little bit farther on. By the time we get to be 75, about half of us have significant hearing loss. So it affects a lot of people. Even if you have a mild hearing loss, that can double your risk of developing memory problems as you get older. Hearing loss is very isolating. It causes people to not participate fully in the world around them. Jeff, go to the next slide here. How would you guys like it if all of a sudden half of your population stopped coming to church? Older people in the greatest generation will keep coming even when they can't hear. Younger people, they're not going to do that. If they can't hear, they can't pay attention, and if they can't pay attention, they're not going to show up. And if they don't show up, they're not going to support your church. And next thing you know, your church is dead. So it's critical to provide good hearing access for people that come to church. You got to hear. It's harder to sleep if you can't, if you can hear really well. So using the loop listener will help you stay awake in your church service. All right, next slide. Okay, so you guys had a system that you had for a long time with little boxes and little headphones, and that worked pretty good. But somebody's got to clean them. Somebody has to test them. Somebody has to troubleshoot them. You guys are really organized, and I'm very impressed, but I've seen churches where they're all in a dirty cardboard box that might have mouse poop in it, and it's disgusting, and half of them don't work, and they're kind of in a corner. I mean, who wants to use something like that? That's yucky. So the old way was to use those little boxes and the headphones, and they work. Those use radio waves, and those work fine. The beauty of the hearing loop, though, is that you can still have the boxes for people that don't have hearing aids. But if you have a hearing aid, all you have to do is flip your switch on or activate your program. And it's usually very simple. And a lot of people tell me that they're not sure about the technology. They don't know if they can manage it. And my message to that person that says that is to go back to your provider and work with them to teach you. That is your provider's job, to teach you how to use the technology that you have to solve the problems that you have. So if you have a hearing loop receiver known as a T-coil or a telecoil installed in your hearing aid, you can have a loop program, and all you have to do is hit a button to activate it or flip a switch to activate it, and you have no reverberation, no background noise, and you can hear very clearly, and it's a lot less listening effort to focus and pay attention. All right, next slide. Being able to use the loop in church, it's literally freedom. You don't have to go get the little box. You don't have to wonder, is it going to work? You just show up, you sit where you want to sit, you flip it on, you listen, and when you're done, you flip it off. It's easy. So that is one of the best things about having the loop, is that you can just be normal. You don't have to go get anything special. You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to be that person with the big box and the big headphones to hear. You can just listen the normal way, like everybody else. And if you're running a little bit late, who cares? You can slide in the back, sit down, turn on the loop, and you're off and running. And that gives you freedom. So it's a nice thing for people. You can also buy your own loop receiver so that you don't have to share it with anybody else. You don't have to worry about it not working. So that makes it a lot easier for a church as well to maintain, because they don't have as many little boxes to troubleshoot and clean and test and things like that. All right, next slide there. Okay, how do you know if your hearing aid has a loop receiver? This is a picture of a really small hearing aid, and it is too small to have a loop receiver built in. But sometimes there are extra accessories. This gentleman up here, I'm sure you guys know him. What's your name?
Joe.
Joe. Joe has a little microphone here that he's using, and there are hearing aids that will work, that are very tiny, that will work with this type of microphone. So even though you might not have the loop receiver built into your hearing aid, you can get the signal through something like that. So don't take no for an answer. Ask, well, is there an accessory that would give me the loop signal? Because there might be. All right, next slide. How about this guy? This guy is this is a canal hearing aid, also custom fit for somebody. It fits in their ear. Generally, these do not have loop receivers, but there are exceptions. You don't know by looking at it. You have to ask. And again, if it doesn't have it, there still might be accessories that can go in it to allow that device to pick up the hearing loop signal. All right, next slide. This is something that fills up all of the part of your ear. This is called a full shell hearing aid. And the chances of this one are pretty good. I personally don't ever order this style without a loop receiver, unless for some reason it's a model that it's not an option. But most of the time, a style like this should have the loop receiver already built in. And if it doesn't, often it can be added. So that's an option. And again, there are accessories that can give you the loop as well. A hearing aid that looks like this, that goes over top of your ear, chances are much better that it's going to have a loop receiver. It's not a guarantee. You cannot tell by looking at it. So you have to ask. You have to ask your provider, does this device have a loop receiver? Can I get a telecoil activated? And again, there are accessories that can give you that if they say it doesn't. If you have no idea if your hearing aid can pick up the loop, ask your provider. And if they don't know, they golly well can figure it out. And don't take no for an answer. Ask, okay? We try really hard at our office to code all of our patients, loop, no loop, loop, no loop. Not everybody's coded, I can promise you that. So sometimes people will call and they'll ask our staff, do I have a loop in my hearing aid? And they'll look it up, and if it's not obvious, then the staff will say, let me call you back, I'll find out. And they come and ask one of us, and we go look it up, and we find out. So it can be found out pretty easily. If your over-the-ear hearing aid does not have a loop receiver in it, it cannot be added in, unfortunately. You can often get an accessory that will work, but it cannot be added in if it's already an over-the-ear hearing aid. It's either in it or it's not. If it's a custom hearing aid, it may be able to be added in if there is enough space, if it doesn't have it to begin with. If your hearing aid is very, very old, and very old in hearing aid land is 6, 8, 10 years old, don't pay the money to have it put in, get a new one, okay? get a new hearing aid. The technology is better and better all the time. Okay, next slide. All right. If you all do not have a sign like this anywhere, you need one. This is the international symbol for notifying people that there is a hearing loop installed. It looks like an ear with a bar through it. To me, it looks like they're saying no hearing. And I hate the sign, but it's the international symbol. The ear with the bar and the little T means that it's a loop. And so when you see this symbol, even if there's nothing else written on it, this tells you that there is a loop installed. I can't tell you how many places I've been, and I know there's a loop there, and there's no sign. So you can't have too many signs. You know, put it in your bulletin, put it on the front door, put it in the bathrooms, put it everywhere. You know, sanctuary has a loop, because otherwise people don't know. And if they don't know, it's no good to anybody. All right, next slide. All right. If you're using the loop, you can have some variations in the volume of your sound under certain conditions. The loop is near the edge of the room. And so if you are talking or standing really close to the edge of that room, over where the loop is actually installed, it can cut your signal out. It can make it very loud. Think of a bunch of magnetic shavings on a, you know, that little game kids would play and they draw with the little magnetic shavings and move them around with a little magnet. Think about that. You're in a magnetic field. That is how the loop works. And so if you get close to where the field is being generated around the loop, it can make your signal kind of wonky. Question?
I was just going to let you know that our hearing loop is looped all through
Perfect.
the pews,
That's
so
great.
it should be fairly stable sound.
Excellent. So it doesn't matter where you sit, and so really you're going to be good. That's a great installation design.
Yeah, it's not out
It's
the
not on
edges,
the
but
edge.
it's within the
Perfect.
pews.
That is wonderful. Thank you for that comment. So you guys are lucky. And we are lucky in Indiana. Mark Badinger, who installed your loop, is phenomenal. He does a great job. There's another gentleman out of Chicago that does installations, and he's done some of the ones. His son is a Purdue grad, so I think they've done some of the ones at Purdue. And this is why we don't install hearing loops, because I don't know what, I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not a sound engineer, and I'm certainly not a structural engineer. You have to know what you're doing. Anybody could probably loop their living room if they read up a little bit and do okay. But trying to loop a large space like this, you have to know what you're doing. And that's why you can't just hire, you know, Bill the warden to do it for you. You got to have somebody that knows what they're doing. If your hearing aid telecoil is in a funny place, especially for a custom hearing aid, you might get signal cutouts depending on how you hold your head. With the way your loop is designed, you're not going to have that problem in this space, probably hardly at all, probably not at all, just because of the way it's set up. Other loops where it's on the outside, you can get some funny signals as you move your head or as you move your loop receiver box around. It can cut in and out and get louder and softer, okay? One of the things that I hear comments about people about hearing loops is that when there is, you guys have a great sound system. I can't say that enough. I'm so impressed. But some churches, they only have 1 or 2 microphones at the lecterns. And so if they have a moment during the church service where they have, you know, prayer requests from the congregation or announcements, if the minister doesn't go up to that person with the microphone and they stand up and say what they're going to say, it's not coming through your audio system, so you're going to miss it. So good microphone etiquette is to repeat the question. I have no doubt that you guys are really good about that. Sometimes we go out and we've done talks at like Westminster and places like that, and the people there will literally yell at you if you don't hold the microphone up. And that's actually good. You have to advocate for what you need. So if you need someone to hold the mic up, you have to tell them, because people get lazy and the mic goes down, and then you yell at them, they pull it up, and then it goes down again. A mic like what I'm wearing, I know I'm breathing into it some, so you're getting some pops, but for the most part, it's not moving around. And so there's no chance I'm going to drop it down and not come through the mic very well. But if you don't talk right into a microphone, it doesn't work. You have to talk right into it. If someone is having microphone problems and they step away from the lectern, again, the sound goes down, you lose it. Don't let people say, oh, I'm loud enough for everyone to hear me. It's not true. It's true for 3 seconds, and then they forget, and then they're back to their normal tone, and nobody past the front row can hear them. So just say, use the mic, step up to the mic. Okay. So hearing well equals living well. I cannot emphasize that enough. You have to hear to enjoy your life if you're a hearing person. Go ahead. I don't remember what I was going to say on this slide. We know that people that have mild hearing losses are at risk for developing memory problems. And the more hearing loss you have, the higher that risk gets. When you don't hear well, you don't participate, you don't get out, and your world just gets smaller and smaller and smaller if you let it. And so you guys really should be congratulated, and you should feel very proud of your church and your community for taking the steps to put this loop in. It's huge. You will get people coming to your church because they can hear here and they can't hear there, or some other church that doesn't have a loop. Having the loop gives you the ability to control your own listening experience when you're at church. And again, you don't have to go get the magic little box. You just flip on your loop receiver and off you go. And it's lovely. All right, next slide, please. All right, where can you find hearing loops? We have some handouts that we brought that have lists of all the loop locations in our area. Also online on our website, we have a pretty comprehensive list of all the loop locations in and around our area. If you want to look nationwide, you can go to hearingloop.org or timetoloopamerica.com. Both of those websites have links to a lot of places that are looped. In New York City, a lot of the theaters have hearing loops. In London, the taxis have hearing loops. One of my patients told me they went on a river cruise in Germany, and the museums they stopped at had hearing loops. There are a lot of different places. In the United States, it tends to be in pockets. In 2010, Mary Cacavo had a presentation at Jenks Rest at Columbian Park in Lafayette, and she invited the priest from St. Mary's Cathedral and other people, and we did a little presentation just like we're doing today about hearing loops. And a man came and had loop listeners like what some of you all have, and he talked about loops. And Father Dan from St. Mary's jumped on that, and he installed a loop at St. Mary's Cathedral, and that was the first loop in Tippecanoe County, and that was in 2010. There were no loops in 2010. Fast forward to 2021, we've got so many we can't even put them on one page anymore. Loops beget loops. When you have this experience, then you want more. No one will listen to me. They think I'm trying to sell them a hearing aid. They'll listen to you and you and you and you. If you go to your movie theater and complain, why don't we have a hearing loop here? If you go to any place that you have a hard time hearing and complain, if they get enough complaints, they'll put a loop in. I have tried to talk to good, rich quality theaters. They will not speak to me. I made myself a persona non grata there. Go ahead. Good question. The question is, do loops work in restaurants? And that is a great question. And the sad answer is not very well. It would work to let you know your table was ready. Mr. Smith, table for two was ready. Other than that, loops really work in large places where you've got a group of people needing to hear. Airports, sports venues, churches, theaters, places like that. One-on-one small groups, they're not as effective. There are other things that can help. Your little microphone helps in a restaurant, okay? And if you don't know how to use that, ask your provider, okay? All right, next slide. What do we got on the next one? Oh, this is Joe's turn now. I'm gonna turn my mic off and Joe's gonna talk about some of her.
So can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Great. Hold on. So just by looking at me, you all probably would assume I don't have a hearing loss because I'm younger, I speak very well. When I was 8 years old, I lost my hearing and I've been wearing hearing aids ever since. So loops are fantastic and a great way for me to hear in reverberant places like this. One of the main reasons is I get to hear everything, and two, it limits my exhaustion. Trying to hear in a facility like this without a loop is exhausting. I have to work 10 times as hard as a normal person, and it takes a toll on me. I know we didn't come here to talk about COVID, but the masks and everything has been really, really difficult for me and a lot of people, even people with a little bit of hearing loss. But I am a volleyball coach and I spend a lot of times in gymnasiums, and every time someone makes an announcement on a PA system, I don't hear it because it just sounds like jumbled, garbled mess. But if we had a loop, I could hear them clearly, much like what you all are hearing now. When I lived in other places, there were not accesses to loops, and I wasn't really sure how it worked until I moved back home to Lafayette and got to listen to the loops in our office, which was really great. So I really enjoyed turning on my loop during my lunch break, watching the TV, or going to presentations at Elliott Hall or other places that have a loop so that I could hear. It's just much more pleasant for me as a hearing aid user just to discreetly flip my switch, and then that's it. Then I leave and I turn it off. Or if you're a smartphone user, you can just do it with your phone, and then that's it. I don't know. You want me to talk about anything else?
Let's open it up to questions. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Will it work in the fellowship hall?
So the question is, will the loop work in the fellowship hall? Not until you loop your fellowship hall. So St. Lawrence Catholic Church in Lafayette, they have their sanctuary looped as well as their fellowship hall. So.
We do not have fellowship hall or the narthex.
Okay.
I had the headset on and I walked out there, it shut.
Okay. So you have to be in the loop to hear the loop, and when you step out of the loop, it doesn't work anymore. So your narthex is not looped, and neither is your fellowship hall, but maybe future projects. But you also have to think, okay, what's your need? Do you have presentations out there? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And if you don't, it may not be quite as necessary. So you come in here, yeah, come in here, absolutely. What other questions? Yes.
I got here late,
Yes.
so I'm trying to catch up on everything.
Yes.
But I really don't understand the loop. It's a separate technology, I understand.
Yes.
All right. And it transmits to a coil in the hearing aid.
Yes.
All right. What else do I need to know? Because I'm going to be explaining this to other people.
Okay. So the loop is there. So it's like electricity. Electricity is in your wall. And when it's a wire under the carpet. When you flip your light switch on, the electricity comes on. When you activate a telecoil in a hearing aid or in a loop receiver like what you have, then that signal flows into the receiver and you can hear it. If you are not using a loop receiver, you're just listening to the sound through the speaker the normal way. A telecoil is literally a coil of copper wire inside a box or a hearing aid, and it picks up the electromagnetic energy generated by the loop. Does that make some sense? Okay. Hearingloop.org, there's a lot of information about how it works, and our little handout hopefully will explain it also. Yes?
When I was wearing the headset, first of all, I could hear my own voice through the headset, and maybe I was just picking up on one of our mics.
Yeah, so she's commenting that she could hear her own voice through the headset, and yeah.
The question is also when I turn it on, there's like a buzzing in the headset. Is that normal or?
Good question. So there's a question about there was buzzing in the headset. Because loops pick up electromagnetic energy, you can get buzzing, which is 60 cycle electrical energy. It sounds like a motor running. Brrrr. And so depending on your device and how it's set, you can sometimes get that buzzing. Usually if you have a handheld receiver, if you turn it a little bit, you can kind of manipulate it so you're not getting that quite as loud. If you're using the loop signal through your hearing aid, adjusting that 60 cycle down will usually take it out.
So if someone is mentioning, now I hear fine, so I took it off. I wanted to know what it sounded like fine. So if somebody does report that it's distracting, I'm getting the buzzing, you just position
So the question is, if you're getting buzzing through the loop receiver, what do you do? If you have a handheld loop receiver, you might try positioning it and seeing if that can help. If you're listening from your hearing aid and you're getting the buzzing, you need to go back to your provider and talk to them about it and let them adjust it. It's a common problem and it can be fixed. Sometimes it takes some tweaking to fix it in the hearing aid. Other questions? There are loops, like I said, there's a loop at Purdue Elliott Hall of Music is looped. The other theater on campus, Loeb Playhouse is looped. There are a number of classrooms on Purdue's campus that are looped. Beck Agricultural Center is looped. So if you're looking for a place to have a presentation, that's a looped facility. There are a number around Lafayette that are looped. The Michigan State Basketball Arena, I think, or maybe it's Northern Michigan. There's a school in Michigan whose basketball arena is looped. Dr. David Myers is a psychologist with hearing loss, and he has been very instrumental in starting the looping movement across the country. Every hearing aid manufacturer has some kind of special little microphone, little gizmo that will work with their hearing aids. Problem is when you get a bunch of people in a church or a theater, they could have gotten their hearing aids from anywhere. So a loop is the only system available that will talk to any hearing aid or a cochlear implant, any kind of hearing device at all. And it doesn't matter who made it. It doesn't matter how old it is. It doesn't matter where you bought it or who sold it to you, how much you paid for it. A loop is a loop is a loop, and they all work the same. So it's in some ways not that complicated, and it transcends a lot of issues that are barriers to people hearing well in a big auditorium. Price, distance. Hearing aids only work well if you think about a large beach ball. If you're holding a large beach ball, that's the most effective range for hearing aid. So if you're in the back of a church and you're trying to hear through your hearing aid, the front of the church, it's not going to be loud enough. Even if you're on the front row, if I'm up at the lectern, I'm way outside of that beach ball range. So now I have to hear you through the sound system, and now we're back to the reverberation. And God help you if there's a baby crying, or some parent whispering to their child, stop doing that, don't do that. Behind you, your hearing aid's going to pick that up, and that's going to distract you from being able to hear the sermon, to hear the service, and the loop cuts all of that out. So they are truly wonderful things. There's an airport too in Michigan that's looped. Wisconsin has a lot of loops. Juliet Sturkins is from Wisconsin, so there are a lot of loops around the state of Wisconsin. Florida has pockets. New York City has pockets. What other questions do you have?
When you're, okay, when you're in a room of 500 people, how can you tune it up 490?
I'm not sure I understand your question. When you're in a room of 500 people,
You can't, you have to be able to only hear your people as opposed to the other people.
like if you were in like a group discussion kind of a thing, yeah, that's where a loop is not going to be very effective. A loop is effective when you want every one of those 500 people to hear what you're saying clearly. If you're going to have small discussions among those 500 people, that is not where a loop is going to work very well. Like at Elliott, you can sit on the back row on the top balcony and have the same quality of signal through the loop as you can on the front row. You can sit anywhere, and it's all clear. It doesn't matter where you sit because of the loop signal. And that's also true in your church. You can sit on the back row in the back corner and hear just the same way as if you sit up front. Any other questions?
My husband couldn't be here, he's got a doctor's appointment. His hearing aids, I think, are like 4 years old. He got them from the VA, and he has a box that's attached directly to our TV. So he hits a little, the back part, and then he can hear the TV, and he's not blasting me out of my chair, which has just been wonderful. So would those type of hearing aids, I know you said that you need to ask your provider, normally have a hearing loop, because once this hearing loop was installed, he quit using the headphones because he said he can hear better now.
Okay, so the question was, she's talking about her husband who has hearing aids that he got through the VA, and her husband has a little thingy, a gizmo, that he uses at home to hear the TV. The TV sends a signal into his hearing aids, and he can hear very well through that. And then once they installed the loop, he stopped using the headphones that the church has because he's saying he can hear. He may be already using the loop program. I don't know from what you're telling me. The thingy at your home,
It's a box.
yeah, with the TV, it's
actually attached to the back.
on the TV, yes.
On the TV.
And it works. The reason it works so well is the same principle as the loop, which is what you want to hear is the signal, in that case the TV, here through the sound system, and everything else is noise. So at home, that little box is broadcasting through a radio signal to his hearing aid. You can have the TV where you want it, he can have it where he needs it and hear well. The loop is using electromagnetic signal here in the church, but it's the same idea. The signal is what's coming into the microphone. The noise is the reverberation and everything else. If your air conditioning is running, if it makes noise, the baby's crying, people rattling their papers, coughing in the winter, that kind of thing. You don't have to hear any of that.
Well, and it's really nice because he can be 25 feet away from it. He can still hear it in his hearing aid. Once he goes in the kitchen and there's a wall, it goes away.
Okay, yeah.
But he just loves it because he walked in the first day he had the hearing aids and he turned on the TV and he goes, oh my goodness, it's too loud. I said, that's what I've been putting up with for years.
So her comment is about how the TV was too loud when he was listening with his TV system. My colleague Andrea went with Dr. Mary Cacavo to St. Mary's when they first installed the church loop there and activated it. And they were helping people, I think, before service. And there was a gentleman there who had a hearing aid and didn't really understand how any of it worked. And so Andrea put a loop listener on him or a hearing, I don't remember exactly. She was, no, it was a hearing aid. She gave him a hearing aid that had the loop activated. And he stood up in the middle of church and said, I haven't heard this well in 20 years. And like afterwards, everybody kept commenting to Andrea about that and how powerful that was. He kept going. He couldn't hear. And suddenly, with the loop, it was a lot clearer to him. So it helps. All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate the opportunity. And if you have other questions, we're happy to answer anything that you have.
We'll really appreciate you coming. That's really great information, and the fact that we're able to record it, people can watch it from home.
Yeah. Here, you want?
Take this from you. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me, those online and those using the system, since we've learned it has to go through the microphone to hear. So thank you for that. And I'm not prepared, but on behalf of the First Presbyterian Church, we would like to present you with just a small gift as a thank you for coming and sharing all this wonderful information. And Joe, thank you so much for your story. I was about to just start crying like a baby. I'm so happy for you that that this has helped you. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.